Hi friends, in this video we are going to deal with the important and latest Supreme Court judgments pronounced now in the area of contract, motor vehicles, service and succession law. To know more about them, please watch the video fully. Now we are going to deal with the important judgment titled Swarnalata and others versus Kalavadi and others, pronounced on 30th March 2022. In this judgment, the Supreme Court has held that the exclusion of one of the natural heirs from the bequest in a will cannot by itself be a ground to hold that there are suspicious circumstances. The facts of the case would be that the couple in question had two sons and a daughter. The mother died on 14th August 1995, leaving behind a will bequeathing the properties purchased by her and the properties which she got from her maternal uncle in favor of her two sons. The father died on 8th August 2000, leaving behind a will bequeathing his properties in favor of his two sons and his grandchildren. The daughter was not allotted any property in both occasions. The eldest son died subsequently in October 1999, leaving behind him surviving his wife and two sons who are the appellants herein. Thereafter, the daughter and the surviving son of the testators filed a suit for partition. The district court granted probate of both wills. On appeal, the Madras High Court set aside the probate granted by the district court, holding that there are suspicious circumstances surrounding the execution of both wills. Therefore, agreed by the said judgment, the legatees are on appeal before this court. The Supreme Court has held that the circumstances recorded by the High Court neither individually nor collectively create suspicion. The signature of the mother in the will is not disputed. It was executed on 30th January 1995 and her husband was one of the attestors to the will. The will shows that the daughter was provided 50 sovereigns of gold jewelry at the time of wedding. She was also given various amounts at different points of time. The will also mentions that the daughter's daughter was given in marriage to the second son. This is the reason why the second son joined hands with the daughter. Unfortunately, the High Court completely overlooked all those aspects and proceeded to invent reasons to justify a conclusion that seems to have preceded the line of reasoning. Once it is found that the father not only attested the mother's will and that in his own will, which is a registered will, the father made a mention about mother's will, all the suspicious circumstances sought to be projected would automatically fall to the ground. When it was not even the case of the respondents that the testators were not in a sound and disposing state of mind, the High Court found fault with the appellants for not disclosing the nature of the ailments suffered by them. The exclusion of one of the natural heirs for the bequest cannot by itself be a ground to hold that there are suspicious circumstances. The reasons given in the will are more than convincing to show that the exclusion of the daughter happened in a very natural way. If the will had been fabricated on the blank papers containing the signatures of the mother, there would have been no occasion for the father to make a mention in his own will about the execution of the will by the mother. Also, the occasion for the appellants to seek probate of the will arose only when the respondents filed the suit for partition. Therefore, there was no delay on the part of the appellants in seeking probate. Further, if the bequest under the two wills go, the second son's family may eventually receive 2/3 share of the properties, which is more beneficial for him than getting half share under the wills. Unfortunately, the High Court completely overlooked this aspect and started analyzing the wills with suspicion. Therefore, the impugned judgment of the High Court is incapable of being sustained. In view of the above, the impugned judgment of the High Court is set aside and the judgment of the Principal District Court granting probate of the both wills is restored. In the important judgment titled Sripati Lakumane versus the Member Secretary Maharashtra Water Supply and Sewage Board and others, pronounced on 30th March 2022, The Supreme Court has held that the refusal of a contractor to continue to execute the work unless the reciprocal promises are performed by the other party cannot be termed as abandonment of contract. Moreover, when material alteration takes place in the terms of the contract due to the act of one party, the other party can choose not to perform the original contract and it would not amount to abandonment. The facts of the case would be that the appellant, who was a registered contractor with the government of Maharashtra, became the successful tenderer for the execution of work of regional rural piped water supply scheme. Almost after 5 months, the appellant was directed to commence work. Dispute arose between parties with regard to the execution of the work. Compounding the agony of the appellant, the bills raised by him were not honored in time due to shortage of funds. Therefore, the appellant did not proceed with the work. As a result, respondent number 2 issued a threat to withdraw the work order and also to levy a fine. Ever since then, the parties were at loggerheads, which ultimately led to the appellant filing a suit for recovery of specific sum. The trial court decreed the suit partially, directing the respondents to pay to the appellant a sum of rupees 24 lakhs 97,077 rupees together with interest at 10% per annum from the date of the suit till realization. On appeal, the High Court reduced the decree amount to rupees 7,19,412. Being aggrieved, the appellant has filed present appeal with an issue posed for consideration is whether there was abandonment of work by the appellant. The Supreme Court has held that the entire sequence of events happened between the parties would show that the appellant was not guilty of anything including abandonment. The class 3A of the contract enabled the respondents to rescind the contract, forfeit the security deposit, and entrust the work to another contractor at the risk and cost of the appellant. This clause was never invoked by the respondents. Therefore, this court is surprised, especially in the light of the communications from February 1988 up to October 1989, as to how the High Court could have found the appellant guilty of abandonment. Section 67 of the Indian Contract Act 1872 makes it clear that if any promise neglects or refuses to afford the promisor reasonable facilities for the performance of his promise, the promisor is excused by such neglect or refusal. In the case on hand, the respondents issued the work order, but directed the work order to be kept in abeyance by a subsequent letter. After this stalemate was lifted by a letter, two things happened, namely a change in the diameter of the pipes supplied by the respondents for carrying out the contract and request for the performance of additional work without finalization of the modified rates. Therefore, the respondents cannot even accuse the appellant of non-performance of the contract. Whenever a material alteration takes place in the terms of the original contract, an account of any act of omission or commission on part of one of the parties to the contract, it is open to the other party not to perform the original contract. This will not amount to abandonment. Moreover, abandonment is normally understood in the context of a right and not in the context of a liability or obligation. A party to a contract may abandon his rights under the contract, leading to a plea of waiver by the other party, but there is no question of abandoning an obligation. In this case, the appellant refused to perform his obligations under the work order for reasons stated by him. This refusal to perform the obligations can perhaps be termed as breach of contract and not abandonment. The respondents did not choose to allege breach of contract against the appellant and consequently to invoke the right to rescind the contract under Class 3A. The respondents, if they were justified in doing so, could have taken recourse to the remedy available under Section 75 of the Contract Act and sought compensation for the damage sustained through the non-fulfillment of the contract. On the contrary, they attributed abandonment to the appellant and refused to honor the claims made by the appellant. The refusal of a contractor to continue to execute the work unless the reciprocal promises are performed by the other party cannot be termed as abandonment of contract. Thus, the High Court was clearly in error in overturning the judgment of the trial court on a wrong understanding that there was abandonment of contract on the part of the appellant. Coming to the next important judgment, titled Master Ayush versus the branch manager, Reliance General Insurance Company Limited and another, pronounced on 29th March 2022. In this judgment, the Supreme Court has enhanced the compensation payable to over rupees 50 lakhs in a motor accident case where a person has been rendered paralyzed for life after he met with an accident as a 5-year-old boy in 2010. The facts of the case would be that the appellant, a 5-year-old victim of road accident which occurred on 21st September 2010, became paralyzed for life, because of which he claimed for compensation. The Motor Accident Claims Tribunal awarded rupees 18 lakhs 24,000 to the victim and it was challenged. The High Court awarded a compensation of rupees 13 lakhs 46,805 as against rupees 18 lakhs 24,000. The present appeal has been preferred by the victim, challenging the order of the High Court with allegation that the compensation awarded to him was inadequate on account of the injuries suffered by him. The Supreme Court has held that the minimum wages for 2010 to 11 in the state of Karnataka for employments not covered under any of the scheduled employments can be ascertained from the extract of the notification for minimum wages published in the Gazette on 19th February 2007. As per the extract, the minimum wages payable to a skilled workman in 2010 to 11 is to the tune of rupees 3,708 and 70 paise. In this view, the minimum wages asked on the date of accident is rounded off to rupees 3,700. The compensation therefore is to be assessed on the basis of said minimum wages on the assumption that the appellant would have been able to earn after attaining majority. In addition to the skilled minimum wages, the appellant would also be entitled to 40% for future prospects in view of the judgment of this court in National Insurance Company Limited versus Pranay Sethi and others, reported in 2017-16 SSC 680. Thus, the compensation works out to be rupees 3,700 plus 40%, which amounts to rupees 5,180 per month. The multiplier of 18 would also be applicable in view of the age of the appellant. The loss of future earnings due to the permanent disability for life thus works out to be rupees 11 lakhs 18,880. As per the medical certificate produced by the appellant with advanced reciprocating gait orthosis with bilateral elbow crutches, the appellant can perform independent ambulation. The mental and physical loss cannot be computed in terms of money, but there is no other way to compensate the victim except by payment of just compensation. Therefore, in view of the physical condition, the appellant is entitled to one attendant for the rest of his life, though he may be able to walk with the help of assistant device. The device also requires to be replaced every 5 years. Therefore, it is reasonable to award cost of 2 devices. The appellant has not only lost his childhood but also adult life. Therefore, loss of marriage prospects would also be required to be awarded. The tribunal rejected the claim of taxi expenses for the reason that the taxi driver has not been produced. It is impossible to produce the numerous taxi drivers. Therefore, if the parents of the child have taken him in a taxi, probably that was the only option available to them. Accordingly, this court awards a sum of rupees 2 lakhs as conveyance charges. The compensation comes out to be rupees 49 lakhs 93,000 along with interest already awarded by the tribunal and affirmed by the High Court. Since the appellant is a minor, in view of the judgment of this court in General Manager Kerala State Road Transport Corporation versus Susanna Thomas and others, Reported in 1994 to SCC 176, the amount of rupees 10 lakhs would be disbursed to the father of the appellant as his guardian. If the said amount was already disbursed, the same shall not be adjusted. The rest of the amount would be invested in one or more fixed deposit receipts so as to attract the maximum rate of interest. The interest amount shall be payable to the guardian every month. It shall be open to the guardian during the minority of the appellant to seek orders for withdrawal of the amount on the basis of medical opinion if any major medical expenses are required to be incurred. In the important judgment titled Jai Bhavani Shikshan Prasarak Mandal versus Ramesh and others, pronounced on 29th March 2022, the Supreme Court has applied the doctrine of necessity to sustain the findings of a disciplinary inquiry committee against a school principal after noting that the president of the committee had to be replaced due to ill health. The facts of the case would be that the disciplinary proceedings were initiated against first respondent on certain allegations of serious nature. The Departmental Inquiry Committee held an inquiry in which the first respondent was given all opportunities of fair hearing, including permission to be represented by a lawyer. After the completion of the inquiry, the management passed an order imposing the penalty of removal from service, which was challenged before the school tribunal. The tribunal held that the constitution of the inquiry committee was not in accordance with Rule 36(2)(b) of the Maharashtra Employees of Private Schools Conditions of Service Rules 1981. The appellant management filed a writ petition before Bombay High Court. The single judge affirmed the view taken by the school tribunal. The intra-court appeal filed by the management was dismissed by the division bench. Being aggrieved, the management is on file before this court. The Supreme Court has held that Rule 36(2) provides for the composition of the inquiry committee, which can comprise of one member amongst the members of the management nominated by the management or the president, one member nominated by the employee from amongst the employees, and one member chosen by the chief executive officer from the panel of teachers if the inquiry is against an employee. But if the inquiry is against the head, the inquiry committee should comprise of the president of the management, one member to be nominated by the head from amongst the employees of any private schools, and one member chosen by the president from the panel of headmasters. In the case on hand, the first respondent was the head, as he was the principal of the institute. But admittedly, the first respondent was not the secretary, trustee, or correspondent of the institute to fall within the definition of expression chief executive officer under Rule 21C. The Rule 36(2)(a) begins with the words "in the case of an employee." Rule 36(2)(b) begins with the words "in the case of the head" referred to in sub-rule 1. The interpretation given by the school tribunal and the High Court to the aforesaid rule would have been acceptable if Rule 36(2)(b) had begun only with the words "in the case of the head." But it begins with the words "in the case of the head" referred to in sub-rule 1. Sub-rule 1 refers to the head, who is also the chief executive officer. Therefore, Rule 36(2)(b) should be construed to apply only to a person who is the head and who is also the chief executive officer. Otherwise, the words referred in sub-rule 1 appearing in Class B would become redundant. Further, the High Court failed to take the note of doctrine of necessity. Once it is admitted that the disciplinary proceedings commenced with an inquiry committee of which the president was a member, and that subsequently he was replaced by someone due to ill health, the doctrine of necessity would come into play. Hence, the impact orders of the High Court and the school tribunal are liable to be reversed. Since the school tribunal rejected all other contentions of respondent number 1 but upheld only the contention revolving around Rule 36(2)(b), the penalty of removal from service imposed upon the first respondent is liable to be upheld. However, if by virtue of any interim order passed by any forum, the respondent number 1 has been granted any monetary benefit, the same shall not be recovered from him.